welcome to First Glance with Jody Vance. I'm excited to introduce you to our next guest on our program, Southern Energy Corp President and CEO. In fact, Ian Atkinson is with us. Ian, glad to have you here.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me, Jody.
One of the reasons why I'm not giving sort of a preamble of what you do and why is because if I was like, Ian, big oil, Texas, Louisiana, out of Alberta, a bunch of people would be like, click, because people are investing, wanting to make sure that clean energy is part of the conversation. And there's sort of this disconnect that there's going to be a transition, and the way fossil fuels are used, extracted, delivered, all important pieces of the puzzle. We'd be naive to think if we can just turn off the tap and start anew. So I think it's really important that Southern Energy Corp get an opportunity to sort of bring forward a couple of the things that I think personally make you an interesting place to put investment dollars. And it does start with giving that sort of mindset. So without it sounding too like, okay, give me your Coles Notes 411, what is about you that sets Southern Energy apart from perhaps others in your lane?
That's a great question. And I think it is topical of all investors now with looking for clean energy. I think we're going back to the basics. We're going back to the boring old conventional reservoirs. There has been this shale gas revolution, shale oil revolution, very expensive drilling. But I think what happened in that kind of 5 or 6 year period was a lot of the larger companies, more sophisticated companies, left these older basins with conventional reservoirs, and they've been really untouched, unloved for that time frame. But still a lot of potential there. So it's going back to the basics, and for us, choosing to focus on the U.S. Gulf Coast area, although yes, we are an Alberta-based management team, is because we like that access to the global LNG market. So we produce predominantly natural gas. We're about 100 miles from the U.S. Gulf Coast with the main core of our assets, which is where the U.S. is shipping all that natural gas to the global economy, looking for that cleaner fuel transition from maybe coal to wind and solar eventually. But I think natural gas is part and parcel in that base fuel.
And I'm glad you brought up your front office, because as a woman, I like the statistic of the fact that you have some significant gender diversity in your front office.
Yeah, we do. And that's something we're proud of. Did I architect that? No, we just picked the best people for the job. I mean, we've been together as a group in this company and these assets for about 8 years, but most of us have known each other and worked with each other for 10 to 15 years. So it was the most skilled person for the role. And as we filled this out, it ended up being almost a balance 50-50 of male, female, when you look at that gender diversity, and it really works well. You need different personalities to lead a company. You need certainly different backgrounds, and we're certainly proud of that.
I dig that. Like, you're not even checking boxes. Like I would have been okay with, yeah, you know what? It's a mission for our company to make sure that we have that balance, but that it happened organically is even better and makes you even cooler, Ian. Frankly.
Totally. I mean, we're a small company, right? We're a growth company, so we do plan on having a larger market cap, larger shareholder base. So for us right now, it's focusing on having the right people. And yes, those kind of things are, box checking items for maybe bigger companies. But for us, it's strictly the right person for the role and the right personality for the team.
Which is also really important. And here on First Glance with Jody Vance, for those who tune in, maybe know you and are like, what is this Equity Guru First Glance thing? We are about getting in on sort of the ground floor, getting in on the company that before it hits maybe as big as you can't afford it, because there are a lot of people that are trying to get into investment. When we first started doing these segments, I would begin by saying investing shouldn't just be for expensive suits and pocket squares, right? Like there are those of us who want to get into it and maybe feel intimidated by not knowing what the graphs on the BNNs of the world are. So being accessible to the investor of all levels is what we're here for. And in doing so, I have to tell what your stock symbol is, because I'm a little late on that. Southern Energy Corp is the name of the company, and it's S as in Sam, SOU.V on the TSX Venture Exchange. So SOU.V. Ian Atkinson is the president and CEO. And Ian, can you give us a little bit about your background? Because you did mention there that, some of the people on this team, you've been working together for almost a decade. And so this is clearly you're not your first rodeo, and that's not trying to be cliche because you're in Calgary.
No,
Okay, a little bit.
a little bit, yeah. Yeah, myself, I'm an engineer by background. I have 28 years of experience in oil and gas. Started off with the larger companies. Talisman Energy was one of my first companies. If you recall, there was a company called Renaissance Energy back in the day, which we grew to 100,000 barrels a day, got bought by Husky. After that, I entered into what I would call the more entrepreneurial world. I started a private company with some co-investors called Morpheus Energy, which was an ARC Financial funded company. And then most recently, before I forayed into the US, I was a co-founder of a company called Athabasca Oil Corporation. I was there for almost eight and a half to 9 years. And what I realized in my tenure in this business is you want to like who you work with. You want to be excited about going to work every day, so you have to like the assets. And I think more importantly now is what are you giving back to investors? And clean energy and ESG is certainly a focus, but we are a growth company, and we all have our own personal investment in Southern Energy, and so we treat investors' money like our own, and we want everyone to make a return on that in a responsible manner.
I think that's big, being personally invested in the success of a company, as opposed to like creating something that you can then, pull your cash out of and move on to the next event,
exactly.
right? There's so much of that. Southern Energy Corp is what we're talking about. You went public in late 2018.
Yeah, that's correct. And we also just we went public on the AIM markets of the London Stock Exchange in August of 2021 to kind of round out our global access to equity as we capitalize ourselves.
Now, expand a little bit about why Southern US. I mean, you did say, we're 100 miles from the coast, so they're at, the accessibility of the world market and that. But from an investor standpoint, what's the upside of being down south, if you will?
Sure, there's a couple. I mean, pricing is one thing. We receive NYMEX gas pricing at our wellhead. So when you see a Henry Hub or a NYMEX gas price, that's what Southern Energy gets. Now, when you come back into Canada, for example, people are excited about a $4 gas price right now. We would receive kind of a $6 equivalent, because we're getting about $4.75 US. So there is a premium to be location. Zip code is not just for real estate, it is actually in oil and gas assets and investing as well. And also in this Gulf Coast area, there really is a pretty significant deposit of conventional reservoir. And as I mentioned, the focus certainly in the southern US in the last 5 or 6 years has been shale plays. And so these conventional reservoirs have been undercapitalized, underloved, and so they're very low decline, very stable. We look to acquire assets as well as develop our own. So I think it's a good niche of the type of assets that are there, the high quality conventional reservoirs, coupled with pricing, which is certainly driven by that proximity to the global export market with LNG.
And your engineering background certainly comes into play when you're talking about the expertise behind that.
Yeah, my inner nerd is right at the surface.
I dig that about you. Let's talk a little bit about how Southern Energy Corp is trying to help bridge the gap between, as you had mentioned, the coal-based energy into the natural gas lane, and then looking forward. Like, how is the business evolving? I don't know if this is a stupid question, but it's certainly a question I don't know the answer to, is when people want change and they want it now, and then somebody points out the fact that you're using something that is rooted in petroleum, like you're going to need to, we're all going to need to have an adjustment period. How is the oil business and the natural gas business evolving to meet those new targets and needs?
Yeah, I mean, that's also a great question. As you know, change never happens that fast, especially when you're dependent somewhat upon political agendas and regulatory regimes. But certainly there is a focus globally to transition to a cleaner fuel, which I think is going to, and certainly at our company, we think is going to create a higher demand for electricity. And so it's how you generate that electricity, which is where I think we come in. Certainly there has been, in the last 10 to 15 years, a decline in coal-fired power generation in the United States and in Europe, and certainly in Canada, but to a little bit of a lesser extent. Wind and solar are being developed, but they're not really dependable yet. I do think they're going to gain market share, but the one fuel that is much cleaner than coal, much cleaner than oil, when you have to burn it to generate electricity, is certainly natural gas. And I think that's where we can come in, even though we're a small company. we're focused on delivering that low cost product to generate a cleaner electricity for, you know, where we operate, which is in the southern US, but certainly North America.
SOU.V on the TSX Venture Exchange, Southern Energy Corp. When you're talking about natural gas, in my head, I'm a Red Seal chef. I went to culinary school. My significant other is a corporate chef. And when people start talking about, oh, natural gas, no, you just cut it right off. It's like, how do you cook without it? Like in every commercial kitchen, it is a vital piece of, I mean, when you talk about electricity versus, I mean, that would be, you know, astoundingly difficult to convert every culinary outlet on the planet from natural gas to electrical, like even if we're not talking about vehicles, cooking, right? Right? Yeah. I mean, yeah, we all want to be. I don't think people
realize the connectivity to hydrocarbons, even the ones that don't want to be. There's a connectivity there, and you know, I think you had a good example of being a chef and how reliant you would be on natural gas for that, which is a part of everyone's life.
So, but it's when, and this goes back to when I introduced you, and because people, it must be incredibly challenging, and I'm putting words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it must be incredibly challenging in this time of climate emergency and everybody, you bad, everything else good. And then being in a position of having to explain, no, without us, actually, nothing really works right now. So we need to actually do this together. I mean, oversimplifying it, but.
No, you're not. And it is difficult because when you're in my seat in a hydrocarbon producing company and you're trying to convince the non-believers that you need what we produce, there's already a disjoint in your underlying beliefs. So I think if you just stick to the facts and, you know, try to use third-party information, government information, or just give them examples like you did of, hey, you use natural gas for cooking, or, you know, you need electricity generated by natural gas to heat your home, that kind of thing. Then I think you kind of see some common ground and you know, that diversity, kind of that gap, if you will, in beliefs and understanding goes away.
Ian, that's a big piece. Common ground, so lost in today's rhetoric around what does unnerve people, but the explanations are important. I think conversations like this are key. Investors wanting to know that the president and CEO of Southern Energy Corp has this mindset, I think is really important to share. I'm glad we had the opportunity to sort of, you know, talk this through. With all of that in mind, if somebody is like, you had me at Southern Energy, I like Ian, I've already done my due diligence, I like his front office being 45% female and not by checking boxes, like there's a lot of reason why people would be like, I need to know more. So where do they go for more? Where do they go for your deck and your investor relations email address and all that?
Yeah, I would direct them to our website, southernenergycorp.com. That's where you can find our current corporate deck, which you can see where we operate, some of the financial information. In there too, there's email addresses for contact information for myself, our Chief Financial Officer, Calvin Yao. We can answer questions to anyone that is interested. And we are certainly trying to put ourselves out there and get people looking at our story, at our company as we build it up.
So when you're looking at your story, you've kind of given us where you're at. Where do you see yourself going next, particularly at a time where markets can be so unpredictable?
Unpredictable, and it certainly has been in the last couple of years. And that was part and parcel why we listed ourselves publicly on the London Stock Exchange, is because the North American financial markets, which typically support the North American energy industry, were pretty strained, especially for small growth companies like ourselves. We've put some pretty lofty growth targets out there. We currently produce around 2,100 BOEs per day equivalent of natural gas. And we feel we can grow to over 25,000 BOEs per day. And largely, I think we can do that through drilling our own organic inventory on our current assets, but also in this focus area we have, as you mentioned at the start, Mississippi, Northern Louisiana, East Texas. There are a lot of assets in there. I think we would look to consolidate at the right time for our shareholders to make sure, again, it's accretive and the right business for us to do. But we think we can grow quite quickly.
All right. Well, that means that you and I are going to be talking again, because you're going to need to give me updates. Thanks, Ian. Have a great day.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Jody. You as well. Thank you.